Reaching the tower's entrance, Savin carefully searched for magical traps. To avoid any surprises, he conjured a spectral mage hand and sent it forward to test the massive doors. As Savin worked, Gideon closed his eyes and reached out with his divine sense. In an instant, he felt the unmistakable presence of fiends lurking beyond the entrance. There were far more than any of them had expected. Using Gideon's insight, Bon Bon knelt in the snow and marked the demons' estimated positions, giving the party a rough battle plan before stepping inside. "I can't find any traps, but my mage hand can't move the door." The entrance wasn't sealed by an ordinary lock. Bon Bon gave the massive doors one powerful kick, and the ancient entrance exploded inward in a shower of splintered wood. Weapons drawn, the party paused at the threshold. They scanned the silent hall, expecting an ambush, but nothing moved. Cautiously, they advanced through the entrance and rounded the first corner. Beyond it stretched a vast stone chamber lined with heavy wooden doors, towering columns, and flickering torchlight. At the center stood an enormous statue of a frost giant, silently watching over the empty hall. The tower was quiet, almost too quiet. Bon Bon checked the first room. It held nothing more than old supplies and abandoned storage. Gideon searched the second door just as carefully, but it too was empty. Whatever had once been there had long since been removed. Savin quietly opened the third door. Inside sat a lone frost giant, calmly resting on a massive stone seat with an enormous great axe leaning beside him. The giant slowly stroked his beard as he looked at the unexpected visitors. The frost giant's eyes widened as he leapt to his feet with a thunderous roar, gripping his massive great axe. Without hesitation, Savin sprang into motion, darting past the giant and circling behind him before the colossal warrior could react. The giant answered with a furious barrage of attacks. His great axe slammed into the stone floor where Savin had stood only a heartbeat before, sending shattered rock flying in every direction. Savin twisted away from the second swing just as easily. The enormous blade carved through empty air, crashing into the floor with another earth-shaking impact. Despite the giant's overwhelming strength, not a single blow found its mark. Murdoch charged in without hesitation, driving his heavy mace into the frost giant's ankle with a bone-rattling crack. Before the giant could recover, Murdoch followed with a second crushing blow, this time smashing directly into its knee. The giant let out a pained roar as its leg buckled beneath it. Forced to one knee, the towering warrior suddenly found himself at the party's level for the first time. The battle had begun to turn in the hero's favor. Bon Bon seized the opening Murdoch had created and charged the wounded frost giant before it could regain its footing. Rather than cutting with his sword, Bon Bon drove the weapon's hilt into the giant's side with all of his strength. The crushing blow slammed through the creature's armor, forcing the air from its lungs. The frost giant bellowed in pain and fury, its roar echoing throughout the tower as it struggled to rise. Even wounded and disarmed, the giant was far from defeated. Gideon rushed in from the opposite side, perfectly timing his attack with Bon Bon's assault. Instead of striking with the blade, Gideon drove the hilt of his long sword into the frost giant's armor, smashing it from the other side and staggering the massive warrior even further. Caught between the two paladins, the giant struggled to rise as both heroes pressed forward without giving it a moment to recover. Working in perfect unison, Bon Bon and Gideon pinned the frost giant to the stone floor, leaving the towering warrior trapped and completely at the party's mercy. Osborne stepped forward, calmly adjusting the brim of his wizard's hat before speaking two simple words. "My turn." A torrent of roaring fire erupted from his outstretched hands, engulfing the frost giant at point-blank range. Flames crashed into the giant's face and chest, burning through its beard and armor as the hall echoed with a deafening scream. When the inferno finally subsided, the frost giant's face was blackened and cracked with glowing embers. One eye had been seared shut, leaving the towering warrior wounded, blinded on one side, and barely holding onto the fight. Murdoch lowered his mace and offered the defeated frost giant one final chance. Submit and receive a quick death. Bruised, burned, and barely able to stand, the frost giant let out a weary sigh. Fine, get on with it. Murdoch raised his holy mace high above his head, ready to deliver the final blow. Wait! Before the mace could fall, Savin stepped forward, stopping the execution with a single word. Everyone has their role to play. The room fell silent as every eye turned towards Savin, wondering what he had planned for the defeated giant. Closing the door quietly behind him, Savin leaves the defeated frost giant in the room. Gideon pointed toward a dark hallway. That's where my divine sense detected the demons. About 6 of them. Without another word, Savin slipped ahead of the party, hugging the stone walls as he crept toward the corridor. Every careful step brought him closer to the demons, determined to scout their position before the battle began. Carefully, he peeked around the corner and found the source of Gideon's warning. 5 winged demons clung silently to the stone ledges high above the hall, watching the corridor below like patient predators. The creatures had chosen the perfect ambush. Anyone who walked through the chamber without looking up would be surrounded before they realized they were being hunted. Savin quietly counted each demon, memorized their positions, and prepared to report back to the party before the trap could be sprung. Savin crouches in the darkness. Calling upon shadow magic and skill, his body melts into the darkness, and his living shadow silently slipped across the stone floor. The imps never noticed it creeping beneath them. In an instant, Savin erupted from the shadows. Arcane circles flared to life around his hands as enchanted daggers burst into existence, while his crossbows sing with magical force. Steel and sorcery exploded through the chamber in a perfectly timed ambush, catching every demon completely by surprise. Savin's devastating ambush left most of the demons shattered across the stone floor before they even knew they were under attack. Only 2 remained. Reacting instantly, Gideon hurled a glowing javelin with perfect accuracy, striking one of the surviving demons and knocking it from its perch. Before it could recover, Bonbon's enchanted javelin pierced the creature, finishing it where it fell. The last ice mephit let out a terrified screech before fleeing toward the upper levels of the fortress. The party watched it disappear into the darkness. Should we go after it? Bonbon shook his head. We should clear the lower levels first. If we rush upstairs now, we could end up surrounded. The others nodded in agreement. With their plan decided, the party turned their attention back to the unexplored halls below, knowing the fleeing demon would eventually have to be dealt with. The party descended a winding spiral staircase, venturing deeper into the frozen fortress. At the bottom, they stepped into a vast chamber lined with icy doors and frozen stone. Sitting alone in the center was an enormous walrus. The group paused. Oh, the figure huffs, then slowly turns to face them, lifts a flipper, and waves. Hello. The party exchanged confused glances. This was not the fearsome guardian they had expected. The friendly walrus explained that druids often came to the treasure room to pray. If they arrive while you're inside, they'll think you're thieves. You should hurry. He paused for a moment before speaking more softly. I have one favor to ask. If you find a way before you leave this island, could you help me return to my home waters? I've been trapped here for far too long. The party exchanged glances before nodding in agreement. We'll help if we can. Bonbon stepped toward the massive door. Then let's not waste any time. With that, the party prepared to face the trials guarding the treasure room. As Bonbon laid a hand on the door, the world dissolved around them. In the blink of an eye, the party found themselves standing on the outskirts of a snow-covered camp beneath a sky filled with unfamiliar stars. Savin knelt, letting the frozen earth slip through his fingers. We're not on the island anymore. Osborne studied the constellations overhead, his expression growing serious. Those stars place us several miles outside East Haven. The realization settled over the group. Whatever magic protected the treasure room hadn't simply hidden it. It had carried them far across Icewind Dale. A weathered man stepped forward, his face bright with joy. The Frostmaiden blesses us. Bonbon clasped the stranger's hand. "Greetings, traveler. Where are we?" The old man smiled warmly. "I knew she would answer our prayers. Come, warm yourselves by the fires. Choose any empty tent and make yourselves at home." Before anyone could respond, Savin froze. Years of surviving by instinct had taught him to trust that feeling. Something wasn't right. Every instinct he had screamed that danger was close. Gideon quietly reached out with his divine senses. The stranger radiated little true goodness. Not evil, but not nearly as kind as he appeared. Still smiling, the man gestured toward the camp. "We simply need a few more people to help watch over our camp." The party accepted the invitation and gathered around a nearby fire. Bon Bon glanced around the bustling encampment. "How long will you need us? And where is everyone else heading?" The old man chuckled into his mug. "Only a few days. Don't concern yourselves with the others." He smiled a little wider. "You were sent here for a reason." And points above Gideon's head. Murdoch quietly studied the glowing snowflake hovering above Gideon's head, recognizing it as a lingering blessing of Oral's magic. The old man rose from the fire. "I should prepare the others. Now that Our Lady has sent help, there's much to do." Osborne frowned. "We haven't agreed to anything." The man paused, offering a patient smile. "Then take your time and discuss it." He looked around the circle. "But if you weren't meant to be here, why would you have been sent?" The old man wandered off toward the center of the camp, leaving the party alone with their thoughts. Bon Bon watched the countless warriors gathering around the fires. "That's far too many people for a hunting party. Where's everyone going?" The old man turned back with a grin. "Our scouts have found the elk tribe. By tomorrow, everything they own will belong to us. That's why you're here." He laughed as he disappeared into the crowd. Gideon's expression hardened. "I will not stand by and allow innocent people to be slaughtered." Bon Bon hesitated. "But what if this is some kind of test?" Savin rose to his feet. "Whatever it is, I agree with Gideon." Osborne leaned closer to the fire, thinking aloud. "We arrived here through powerful magic, moments after being told we were about to face a test." He looked around the bustling camp. "This is likely an illusion, some sort of enchantment, or perhaps we're witnessing events from the past." Bon Bon nodded slowly. "I don't like it, but until we know what's happening, we should play along." Savin shook his head. "Not my kind of game." Gideon stood beside him, unwavering. "You may play along if you wish. I cannot." As the two stepped away from the fire, their forms shimmered, becoming ghostly and translucent to the rest of the camp, as though they were no longer part of the scene unfolding around them. As Savin and Gideon rejected the choice, they simply vanished. To everyone else, the places they had been sitting were suddenly empty. Osborne frowned, rubbing his temples. "Wait, who was I just talking to?" An uneasy silence settled over the campfire. Bon Bon slowly rose to his feet, a look of confusion spreading across his face. "Something's wrong." He pressed a hand against his forehead. "My memories, they've changed. I know someone is missing. I just can't remember who." As Bon Bon struggled to make sense of his fading memories, an unseen hand gently bumped his shoulder. For a brief instant, he smiled. He didn't know why, but the gesture felt familiar, and the feeling was gone. Bon Bon stood abruptly. "I don't know what's happening, but I have to find my brother. I'm leaving." Osborne sighed, already planning for the journey. There go a few more weeks' worth of rations. Murdoch tightened the strap on his shield. "I wonder if we can retake the test." With more questions than answers, the remaining three prepared to leave the camp, unaware that the magic had already claimed two of their companions. The frozen chamber falls silent. The trial is over, but its meaning remains a mystery. "I think we failed that one." Murdoch says, "It's time to find the Frostmaiden." Bon Bon replies, "Leaving the trial behind, the companions begin the long climb toward their next challenge." The party ascends many a icy stair, and tries not to slip. Eventually, the party reaches the summit of the frozen fortress. Towering before them stand immense doors of enchanted ice, guarded by ancient statues that have watched over this place for ages. Beyond those doors waits the Frostmaiden. The air grows colder with every step, each breath burning our lungs like shattered glass. The very walls seem alive, pressing against us with the crushing weight of centuries of ice and hatred. An impossible silence fills the chamber. No wind, no crackling frost, no distant echoes. It is the silence of a predator that already knows victory. Then we see her, the Frostmaiden, the immortal goddess who stole the sun from the sky and plunged Icewind Dale into endless winter. The being whose cruelty has frozen kingdoms, broken spirits, and claimed countless lives without mercy. The cold radiating from her is unlike anything we have ever felt. It is not merely the absence of warmth. It is the absence of hope itself. Every instinct screams that we should turn back, yet none of us takes a single step. Every trial we endured, every friend we lost, every monster we defeated, every sacrifice we made, it has all led to this single moment. Before us stands not simply an enemy, but a god. If we fall here, there will be no one left to challenge her. The endless night will continue, and Icewind Dale will remain buried beneath her eternal winter forever. There is no retreat, no second chance, only the battle that will decide the fate of an entire land.